The scripture reading this morning is found on Pew Bible page 1202. It's 1 Peter 3:15. 1 Peter 3:15, Pew Bible page 1202. But in your hearts, set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer for everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. But do this with gentleness and respect. May the Lord bless the reading of His word.
What do you think of people who say that the most important people in the work of God are ministers? True or false? Agree, disagree? Don't be afraid to be wrong. Okay, I got a couple thumbs down, I got a thumbs up. Okay, thumbs down, okay. Do you know that I have never heard a minister say, most important people in the work of God is us? I never hear other ministers say that. I have heard people like you, just folks in the church, say that. And here's what I think. I think you're mistaken if that's what you think. First of all, the sheer numbers. There's way more of you than there is of me, unless there's a lot of you in here who have been called to preach and I'm not aware of it. Do we have anybody other than Tony and myself? That's what I thought. Probably most of you have never taught Sunday school class, Bible study, or anything like that, right? Most of you. There's a few of you in here. Some of our Sunday school teachers are in here. Most of you have sat under somebody else's teaching. Well, here's the thing. This scripture is not addressed to preachers or teachers. It's addressed to everybody. So all of us should be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within us when somebody asks. Words of an old hymn go like this. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot preach like Paul, you can tell the love of Jesus and say He died for all. Our prayers for the folks that we know that do not know Christ ought to be for opportunities to tell them and that they would be receptive. We might not be called to preach or teach, but all of us, all of us should be ready to witness. You might not have the courage or ability to stand up and talk to somebody else, to preach, to teach, but you can tell somebody else what Jesus has done for you. Now, what I want to do is just go through a few basic things today to tell you how to do that. First of all, don't shut non-Christians, pre-Christians, out of your life. We used the example in my Sunday school class a few weeks ago of where do you go to catch fish? If you want to catch fish, where do you go? You got to go where the fish are. My neighbor just put in a brand new swimming pool. If I wanted to go fishing, I would not go there. There aren't any fish in there. I wouldn't sit in my living room. I'd have to go to where the fish are. One of the things Jesus was criticized for was hanging out with tax collectors and sinners. He's friends to those people. We have got to rub shoulders and interact with people that need Jesus if we're going to lead them to Him. Some folks think this. I just want to keep myself from being contaminated. I don't want to talk to anybody that doesn't know Jesus. I don't want to be corrupted by them, so I'm not going to look at them. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm just going to hide in my little cocoon here until it's time for me to go to heaven. That's more like a Pharisee than it is a follower of Jesus. Isn't that what the Pharisees did? And isn't that why they criticized Jesus? They tried to keep themselves from becoming contaminated And they criticized Jesus because he hung out with people like that. Now, it is true. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says to avoid bad companions. James 1:27 says don't be polluted by the world. But that does not mean we never interact with folks that need Christ. It's just we don't let them affect us. We are to affect them. The parable of the Good Samaritan was all about loving your neighbor. If you're going to be an influence on somebody to bring them to Jesus, the first thing you got to do is include them in your life. Be their friend. Secondly, our behavior ought to arouse other people's interest in Jesus. You know, talking is not usually the best starting point to interest someone else in the gospel. Integrity is. Be what you say you are. Show up on time for work. Don't participate in the gossip that's going on. Be kind to people that are sad or angry. Don't be standing at the clock 10 minutes before you're supposed to punch out. Put a little extra work in on the school or work project. Be a person of integrity. We were talking to my Sunday school class about how often somebody who just does what they're supposed to do stands out at work. Because most folks are working as hard trying to get out of work as they would if they just do their job. And if you just do what you're supposed to do, you're going to stand out. And someone's going to say to you, "No, why do you walk out of the lunchroom every time we start to talk about Susie?" Well, because I don't want to talk about other people. And when somebody asks you why you're different, and they will, then you have the chance to say, "Well, I'm different now because of the difference that Jesus has made in my life." That's when we move the conversation towards the gospel for people that are interested. And that's when you simply tell your story. Now, I told you a few weeks ago about the deal I had with my neighbor to do the parking lot, etc. He didn't come through, so I'm fulfilling my responsibility to mow the lawn, even though he didn't fulfill his. Yesterday I was outside. It's time to mow the lawn. And my neighbor was outside talking to his son. And I thought for sure, going to come over and say, "Don, I got to talk to you." He didn't, but I was ready. I was ready to tell him how I used to react when people told me they'd do something and they didn't, and the difference Jesus made in my life. But that opportunity did not present itself. But I am ready. I am prepared to say, Jesus has made a difference in my life, and because of that, this is the way I behave now. It usually won't get you anywhere, and because it's really not a good idea to ask somebody if they're a member of a church. Church membership won't get you into heaven. I wouldn't even say, "Are you a Christian?" I wouldn't even say, "Are you born again?" And I definitely wouldn't say, "Has your heart been regenerated by the propitiatory power of the substitutionary death of the only begotten Son of God?" Because their eyes are going to glaze over, like when my wife starts to talk to me about it's time to change the colors of the living room. What? What? I'm sorry, I was watching Cops. But how about this question? Why are you different? Well, I'm different because of Jesus. What does Jesus mean to you? You might be surprised how people will open up to you if you ask that kind of question. Instead of talking about regeneration or substitutionary atonement, you say, "Jesus has made a difference in my life. What's he mean to you?" And I got to give you a little warning for a question like that. Don't be shocked with some of the answers you get. Sometimes people will really open up and start to tell you things that you never imagined. You'll be surprised. I just found out I'm expecting, and I'm not married. My son was arrested for drugs. I'm angry. I just found out that my spouse wants a divorce. And I'll tell you a mistake I used to make as a young pastor. When somebody would tell me their problems, I would be sitting there, my mind would be racing. I have to solve this problem. And you know, most of the time people don't want you to solve their problems. They want somebody to listen. They want somebody to care. And that's when you have the opportunity to say, you know what? I don't have the solution for that, but I do know that Jesus can help you. Can I tell you how He's helped me?